Welcome, my friends, to Inside the Minds of Authors. I'm DC Gomez, and I'm thrilled you're joining me today for a fun conversation with a passionate author. We're kicking off the program, like it's our tradition, with a short reading from the feature book. I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get started.
Hi, I'm Nancy Yeager, and I'm a book club fiction and romance writer. And today I'm going to read from my book club fiction book called When We Were Friends. I'm going to start right out in the beginning where we meet our two protagonists. Chapter 1, 2016. Franny Willits drove north on Indiana State Road 3, hoping for a sinkhole, a spring flood, a 20-car pileup, anything to keep her from the reunion with her ex-best friend. No such luck, as highway signs and her phone's GPS directed her to the exit ramp, toward the address Lexi had given her. Still, Franny blew right past the diner where her former partner in crime waited. She parked 2 blocks down on Main Street and climbed out of her beat-up white Camry in the clean air of Licking, Indiana, population 2,432, if you believed the interstate billboard. She locked the car, probably unlike anyone else here, but 4 years behind bars had made her suspicious. Eyes forward, shoulders back, hands down by her sides, courtesy of the guard's strict training. She followed the incline of the sidewalk, the tree and shop-lined street that said welcome in a plain-spoken Midwestern accent. Lexi probably loved it here, probably felt safe. Franny felt like making a run for it. She passed a few pedestrians going about the business of life. One old man gave her side-eye, probably seeing at a glance what she really was. Eyes forward, steady. Soon this ill-advised meeting would be over, and she would be back at the halfway house in a medium-sized town just 15 miles from the tiny spot on the map where she and Lexi had grown up. Not that she would be staying there much longer. The closer Franny got to the diner, the more her hands shook. She chose not to focus on that, chose to focus on staying alert instead. And she failed. She didn't see the wispy blonde kid, who couldn't be much older than 6, step into her path until it was too late. Franny jumped out of the way and slammed her shoulder against a steel lamppost. She clenched her teeth and fists, ready to absorb a blow or at least a few inventive curse words. Then she collected herself, straightened her jacket, calmed the heck down. This was a kid outside on a perfect spring day, not an inmate with a bad attitude and something to prove. The kid wasn't alone. She clutched a bright pink leash, at the end of which was the saddest sack of fur Franny had ever seen, with a matted black coat, 1 weepy eye, and 4 mud-caked paws. For the life of her, Franny couldn't tell what breeds had gone into making the mutt, and she was pretty sure she'd seen pictures of nearly every breed there was. But oh, that face, long black muzzle and liquid brown eyes, a face like that could melt her heart. Kid and mutt both stared at Franny. "You must be Lexi's friend," the girl said. Wow, this town was really small. "And you must be a who from Whoville," Franny answered. The kid twisted her pale face into a scowl. "Like in the Grinch," Franny explained. "Not funny," the girl said. Franny shrugged one shoulder. "Not trying to be." "Mission accomplished," the girl answered. Franny rethought her assessment of the kid's attitude. She glanced away from the girl with sad blue eyes, brown pink cheeks, and downturned lips. A face like that could break your heart. As Franny watched the mutt, maybe it had some poodle in its family tree, now that she thought about it, he raised a back leg and took aim at the lamppost, and missed. "Oh, crap," Franny barely sidestepped out of the way as the dog sent a stream of pee arcing in her direction. "Language, there's a child present." The words came out of the pale little person in front of her, but they sounded like they could have been channeled from the woman waiting for Lexi in the diner. "How do you know I'm here to see Lexi?" Franny asked. Without answering, the kid walked away and tugged her mangy mutt along behind her. They trudged off into the alley between what looked like an old motel and the greasy spoon that held Franny's fate. With her scraped elbows and muddy sneakers, the girl looked as much like a stray as the dog. Franny shook her head. A town full of strays. This really was Lexi's kind of place. And Franny should know, since she'd been the first misfit her ex-best friend had ever tried to rescue. By the time she reached the front door of Patty's Diner, with its blue and white striped awning over the plexiglass front window with the name stenciled on it, Franny was calmer. She stepped through the front door. As it swung shut behind her, a bell jingled. Her eyes adjusted to the dimmer light. She took in the red leather booths and blue formica tables along the wall of windows to her right, square blue tables surrounded by white chairs down the middle strip of space, and the long white counter to the left. The smells of thousands of fried eggs and bacon breakfasts hung in the air. A mellow pop rock tune hummed out of tinny speakers in the drop ceiling. Crap. It was enough like the diner where she and Lexi had their first jobs to make her lean against the door to collect herself. Eyes forward, breathe, focus. Maybe Lexi had thought meeting in a familiar looking place would set Franny at ease. That just showed how little Lexi knew about her now. God, how she needed to be somewhere, anywhere else. Behind the counter that she could imagine, packed with regulars for breakfast and lunch each day. Coffee pots percolated, day-old pastries aged. Two middle-aged women, one a black woman in a dark blue pantsuit with a white blouse, the other a white woman in a navy blue skirt covered by a light blue apron, stood at the far end of the counter. When Franny caught the black woman's eye, she nudged her companion, and they disappeared into the kitchen, leaving Franny alone in the midst of the mid-afternoon lull. Almost alone. Lexi slid out of the booth at the far end of the room. Her dark curly hair was longer now and hung down over one shoulder. The baby fat on her cheeks had completely melted, taking her from the cute kid she'd been to the beautiful woman Franny had known she'd be, even that first day in third grade. Lexi had walked into the classroom, the new kid in school, carrying a light blue binder and a Goosebumps book. Lexi Harris had been seated in the second row beside Clarissa James, the most popular girl in the class, while Franny sat in the back between Jeremy Thompson and Zane Zimmer. Franny hated Clarissa more than ever in that moment, although she couldn't exactly see why. Now Lexi, wearing a pink and blue floral sundress and navy flats, stood to greet her. Strange, Franny had forgotten how tall Lexi was, but when she reached the table and Lexi stepped forward, the top of Franny's head only reached her chin. Franny stiffened when Lexi hugged her, which made her ex-friend drop her friends and motion for Franny to sit.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Inside the Minds of Authors. I'm hoping you enjoyed that reading as much as I did and ready for this incredible episode. If you're new to the podcast, remember, you can always join the Patreon community and get the behind the scenes of every episode, the live video recording, just by joining the Patreon community. So go ahead and do so. And if you haven't signed up to join us, please do so. We'd love to have you part of the community. So let's get started. Hi, Miss Nancy. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am so happy you're here. Happy you're joining us. We had a talk last month, actually, about a month and a half, in our Amazon Live. So it was such a great time talking to you. So now that I got a reading a little bit more into the book, we need to jump in. Tell us, what is this book about? Where did this idea come from?
Well, the book is about two ex-best friends, and the book's tagline is they were best friends, sisters of the heart, partners in crime until they got caught. And the book starts 5 years later because they literally went on a nonviolent crime spree for very good reasons. They got caught and Franny took the rap because Lexi was in a bad state, in a very fragile state, and Franny, loving her best friend, took the rap. But that did damage. So Franny went to prison. Lexi kind of hobbled a life together, but they're both broken in their own ways. So this is a chance for Franny to come back to her friend and say, look, my parole's almost up. I need to start over because if I stay around here, I'm the ex-con, right? It's not a great life for her. But that money we stole and hid, I need my share. And Lexi says, okay, I get it. I understand, but I have a condition. And the condition is you stay with me for a month and work on our friendship. And then at the end of the month, money's yours, go on your merry way, or maybe you'll plan to stay. And then begins Franny's journey into hell for Franny because she's back in a small Indiana town, the kind that she never wanted to be stuck in. And now she's stuck.
There is so much emotions in this episode and so much charging, and your book brings everything together. All the things you don't want to do, but you still need the money to start over. So where did you make those decisions? How do you come up with this idea? What made you decide this is where I'm going down the path?
For me, stories are always like this mix of just stuff that's been in my brain forever and something new bounces against it and it comes out. And then I start writing and it's not what I expected at all. I think that happens for a lot of authors. So in this particular case, I'd always had this song stuck in my head. It's a 70s song, it's the Steve Miller Band. It's called Take the Money and Run. It's about two lovers, which as a kid, I didn't know what that meant. So I thought it was brothers. I just misheard it. Who take the money and steal some money and go on the run. And I thought, oh, why is that about? Everything's about boys. Why can't it be girls? Why can't it be sisters? Why can't it be friends? And so when I grew up and started writing, I always had this idea I'm going to write a caper someday. And it's going to be a little Thelma and Louise, a little bit take the money and run. And then we hit a very weird political time in the country, mid teens. And I was thinking a lot about, women's bodily autonomy, the legislation happening against it, all these things. And I thought, oh, if I wrote this story about two women on the run, why would they be on the run? Well, one of them's pregnant. She's not by choice. She's poor. How are they going to deal with it? They go on the run, they go on a crime spree, they get caught, and then the fallout from that. And as I started writing that story, I realized I kept asking myself, but then what? But then what? And I thought, how's this going to end? Like when they grow up, they're very young when all this happens, they're 19. How's that going to affect their lives when they grow up? Because, as they mature into women, as you start to build your life, one's an ex-con, one has this terrible trauma in her past. And I started seeing them as, oh, they've gone their separate ways. They're no longer best friends. And now suddenly the story was really crunchy for me. So this is the story of women who've been separated because of past event, and they're trying to figure out if they can fit back together. And they both have, like I said, have very broken pieces. And despite Lexi's life looking really settled and great, she still has a lot of fallout from the trauma. Franny, obviously an ex-con, trying to make it in a small town where everybody knows your name and your past, and they have to try to work it out.
This is the kind of slice of life we normally don't think about, but it also brings you all these pieces into reality because there's no easy answer for either one of them. There is no easy button like, okay, Lexi can move on if she doesn't deal with the trauma. Fanny cannot move on if she doesn't have any money, but she's stuck in this place where everybody's judging her whether she believes it or not. So I love what you bring to these equations. Is this something you're planning to do as a series? Are you going to do a standalone at the end of this book? Is it all wrapped up?
Well, at this point, I don't have a plan for a series with this, although I think it could be a lot of fun to do the next step in their lives. There are, as you met in the first couple of pages, the little girl in that scene is Lexi's stepdaughter, and the mutt is the newly adopted dog that the little girl picked from the pound. And even the dog knows that Lexi's a failure. So that's part of Lexi's life. She's got this little girl who is not bonding to her. She's got this dog who's a mess. Her husband loves and supports her, but she doesn't, have faith in herself. She's really struggling. And as I said, we already know Franny's baggage and background. And then her mom shows up. Her mom's kind of a hot mess, Franny's mom. And then her high school crush shows up in town, and it's like everything's conspiring against her. Like things just get worse and worse. Like who on earth else could show up? And then a person that Franny and Lexi wronged on their crime spree also shows up. So as we get to the end of the book, a lot of issues are resolved and we have a lot of hope. I mean, I'm not going to, spoiler alert, it has a happy ending, an uplifting ending. I like those. I write those. But they're still very young women. They have a lot of life ahead of them. So what's next? Does Franny, stay with the guy? Does she have kids? What does she choose to, she's thinking about a couple careers at the end. How does that go? What happens with her hot mess mom? So there are a lot of things that could lend themselves to a second book. And right now I have about the next 6 books lined up that I have to write. So by the time I'm through with those, maybe my brain will be saying, hey, it would be fun. Let's do a follow-up.
I love it. I love that you already have your schedule planned and the things are going to be happening. We mention other books because we need to talk about it, but you write a multiple genres. So this is not your main story or your first book. Tell us a little bit about your other books.
Well, many years ago, I had a small press publish my first historical romance, and it does not exist, and that pen name does not exist, and it cannot be found. This is all for the good. This is my plan. I learned a lot from that, and I was building a different career, putting our daughter through college, that kind of stuff. Writing was on the back burner, but I always had this idea that I'd go back to romance writing. And when I was about to do that, a lot of my friends who were multiply published, New York Times bestsellers, things like that, because that's one of the things you do as an author, you meet other authors, which is great and fun and wonderful. And some of my friends were saying, if I were restarting, I would self-publish and look into that. So I did a lot of research and learning and started working on a series, an historical romance series, Victorian romance in particular. and wrote a 6-book series in that genre. During the pandemic, I was actually finishing the last book in that series. And I just wanted to do something different and fun. And I couldn't get this story. I'd written a short story for a blog for someone and couldn't get that story out of my mind. And it was just totally different. It was contemporary. It was about spies, of all things, and just kind of came together as a new series. And I ended up, the books 4 and 5 will come out this year, which will wrap up that 5-book series in romantic suspense. Because it's so different and the genre is so different, I do write that under the pen name Harper Cross. So yeah, I have an historical romance series under Nancy Yeager, romantic suspense, fun, lighthearted spies, romantic suspense under the name Harper Cross. And now I appear to be going into a third genre with the book club fiction.
Tell me, how do you have time to plan all these books? And how do you keep yourself straight from one genre to the other?
It's actually pretty easy, honestly. When I sit down, interestingly, both the women's fiction and everything I've written under Nancy Yeager is written in third person. And when I change over to Harper Cross, I'm writing in first person, which makes it really fun. And I think helps me switch voice pretty quickly. It can also be a little claustrophobic. Sometimes I need a little break. I need to step back away from the characters, but I think that really makes a big difference. But the other thing is that they just feel different. So, which is another reason why there are very successful authors who write in multiple genres under one name. And they might write historical and contemporary and all these different things, but that wasn't working for me. It just has a different vibe. You still have really smart women, which is what I love to write about. You have sexy men, love to write about that. The books are steamy, but they're different enough that I picked a different pen name. Now, I will say the book club fiction is not, there is a romantic storyline. It's not steamy. So whether you like that or don't, that's the information you might need.
You have a little bit of everything in your writing, so prolific. Do you have a favorite genre that you write in, or you're like, I like them all?
I do. It's kind of like whatever I'm writing now is the thing. I think you have to, in order to invest the time, you have to sit down to the book and kind of give it its due and love it. And like I said, I was writing the 5th book of my series. I don't know if I move my head. The purple book up there is the last book in the historical romance series. I was writing that when I had to step away, and I worked on the first book in the contemporary series. And it was because I wasn't in love with the book at the time. It had a lot to do with it being 2020, the pandemic. We were all in a weird headspace, and I just couldn't finish that book. And I knew if I wrote it and finished it in that state, I would never be happy with the book, and I wouldn't give it its due, and I wouldn't give those characters their due. So it was really lovely is when I did go back to finish that book in 2021, I fell in love with it all over again. So I think that's the important piece. I mean, it was the first time I'd ever walked away from something that I truly intended to publish. And it was really hard. And it was the best decision I ever could have made. When I went back to that book, like new things clicked into place. The characters, revealed new things about themselves I didn't expect. And I really fell in love with that book because I wrote it as well.
I love the fact that you gave yourself the grace to step away. You were like, okay, I need to have a break. This is not working. And then you went back. So it's not like for anybody listening to us, you can take a break. You're allowed to take a break. And then you can come back and be okay with it and find yourself in love with this characters all over. So, that is so good. I love it. So question, Madame, you have been writing multiple genres. You've tried a little traditional, you try a little indie. What advice would you give an up and coming author who's like, this is something I want to do?
Oh, so much. I mean, first of all, study craft. I mean, you do that by reading, find teachers or mentors that work for you. There's a lot of free information online about writing craft. There are conferences you can attend at varying price points. It can get really expensive, so try not to go crazy. You don't need to invest thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to get yourself started in writing. So I think, but invest in yourself at least with time and with respect and, with believing in what you're doing, believing that it's important to you, it's important to readers. Fiction is important to the world. And the other piece of advice is really be careful about, I'd written something recently a couple months ago for a blog post, and I used the phrase, in this business, comparison is the thief of joy, because it's so easy to look at other people doing great things, doing amazing things, and it looks seamless and it looks easy. And why is it so hard? Everyone has their tough spots. We're not good as a society, I think, of celebrating that things can be really tough and we can overcome them until we're past the hump. Like, we don't want to talk about it when we're in it. I didn't go online or even my newsletter. I talked about the book being delayed, but I didn't say every time I sit down to write 5 Ways to Seduce a Dude, I am almost in tears because I can't connect. It's hard. It's tough. I went through that for months. Eventually, I finished that, and it's one of the most fun books. It sold really well. It had a nice launch. And for me, I'm not a big launch author. So for me, it was one of my best launches because the love was there. So if I had said, oh my gosh, author X got all their books out exactly on time in, months apart, and it was great. And I'm a loser. I can't do this because of that. I would have stopped writing. So you have to be really careful. And, the phrase I sometimes use with other writers is keep your eyes on your own paper, right? It's great to look and see, how do we market? How do we do other things and learn from other authors? But don't be so hard on yourself when you don't have exactly the same results. You're not the same author. Your books are not the same. You are a unique snowflake. You need to celebrate it. You need to accept it. You need to deal with it sometimes. And so just really be in tune with your own journey.
Ooh, for our listeners, that is such a great advice because sometimes we spend so much time comparing ourselves and so much time fighting ourselves because we're not as good as A, B, and C instead of realizing, hey, you're doing amazing as you are. Slow down and enjoy. So I love it. We talked a little bit about what you're working on, the 6 projects. What is next for Miss Nancy? What do you have coming up that you can give us a sneak peek?
Well, I do have under Harper Cross, I have books 4 and 5 are coming out in May and August. And then a rom-com, sort of rom-com, still in the same world, still spies, just a little lighter and funnier. And that's coming out. It's a multi-author project coming out. I'm not allowed to give any titles or anything. I just realized we haven't, I don't think I've crossed any NDA lines yet, but I'm getting close. But that'll be in October, November timeframe. If anyone's really, really wants to know exactly what I'm up to, you can always pop over to websites, Nancy Yeager Books or Harper Cross Books, and sign up for newsletters to get the nitty gritty. But so I have those 3 books coming in romantic suspense. I also have a novella coming in the fall as part of an anthology in historical romance. So I've got multiple romances coming out this year. And I am just finishing a round of revisions on another book club fiction book. And that's been a little bit under wraps, but it's basically about 2 frenemies. They're in a book club together and they join a bigger online book club launch for a debut author. And they each have reasons for wanting to raise their profile with this book club and start behaving badly. And everything starts to fall apart. And it's about friendship. Again, I write about friendship. There's a light romance in it. And there's a whole finding your true self kind of theme and finding out who really believes in you. Always themes that I explore.
I love the fact that you have all these themes that are very universal, that everybody can connect, that everybody can kind of relate to, that I absolutely am loving it. You mentioned your website. What is your website? Where can our listeners find you? Where they can learn more about your books? Tell us.
Yeah, it's really easy. It's either Nancy Yeager Books, and that has anything written under Nancy Yeager. So that'll be the book club fiction. It'll also be the historical romance, newsletter, all sorts of things. And then there's Harper Cross Books. There are multiple names to that one, but Harper Cross Books will get you there. Again, you can learn about romantic suspense. If you love anything to do with spies, if you liked Alias, if you liked the Bond movies, if you just like, hot guys running around with weapons, that's a really great series. And I'm enjoying it. It's really starting to get some traction. And I'm going to be doing a lot of fun things with it. So sort of some different things I haven't done in other genres before, some serial fiction and a few other things that I'll be exploring. Because, that's the fun thing about writing too, is trying new things, learning, growing, and it can be a lot of fun.
Oh, Madame, congratulations. I am loving your journey. I'm loving everything you have going on. So as you continue to bring more stuff, come and let us know. We're definitely here. Are you ready for the lightning round?
I hope so. We'll see.
Easy peasy.
I will say for listeners, it's like it's before noon, and so I will just point that out before we start.
You got this. Don't think too much about this. Let's see how you do. Pepsi or Coke?
Ooh, Coke. But I actually don't drink carbonated beverages anymore. But in the old days, Coke, 100%.
Not bad. T-shirts or sweaters?
Ooh, totally both because I have both on right now. Totally weather dependent.
I like. For you as a reader, do you prefer series or standalones?
Ooh, I'll read anything I love. So I do both a lot, but I think these days probably more standalone. I'm
Fair,
not sure why.
fair enough. Scary movies or comedy?
Oh, comedy, especially if it's rom com. I'm all there for the rom com.
Here's a little different. Let's see. This is our last one. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Ooh, man, maybe flying. I don't know. I
Why that?
I don't even know what in particular I want to do with it. It's not like I leave the house that much. I feel like flying, I'd avoid a lot of traffic, maybe see a cool view of some things.
I like open to options and possibilities. Perfect. Nancy, do you have any closing remarks for us?
I love connecting with readers. So anyone who wants to reach out can do that. And like I said, best way to follow me is keep up with my newsletter, check my website, say hi. And I really enjoyed being here. Loved reading for you. And I hope you'll check out the book When We Were
Oh,
Friends.
thank you so much, Madam. To our listeners, make sure to connect, check out her website. She has multiple, depending on your genres. You're going to have plenty of things to enjoy. If you're new to the podcast, make sure to subscribe. You don't want to miss an episode. And if you're interested in seeing behind the scenes what really goes on when we're recording, join the Patreon community. And we will see you again next week. Bye, everyone.